We are making stuffed baked apples with apple crisp topping. Two of my favorite things in the world stuffed into one lovely apple. So after washing our hands and our apples, what do? We always read through our ingredients, make sure we've got everything, and read through our instructions. So we need 4 medium-sized, firm, crisp, sweet apples, and it calls for Pink Lady or Honey Crisp. We often don't see Pink Lady, so Honey Crisp for sure. Remember, these are the Honey Crisp. I don't often encourage getting, especially my family, getting a Honey Crisp apple, because in the fall when they pick up an apple and walk away to eat it, they won't eat the whole thing because they'll get full and then they'll throw it out. So this to me is really hard to eat. So if you want to choose something that is more a single serving size, then you're more apt to eat the whole thing. So I would probably encourage Honey Crisp, that's smaller. We kind of got a smaller one there. And then Fuji and Granny Smith. There is a Golden Delicious, and this is an Ambrosia. So you don't really want to do a Macintosh or a Cortland, because those are really going to go to mush when you cook them, and you really want an apple that's going to stay its shape, because you're going to be eating the skin after, and you don't want the inside to just do that. So inside that, we're going to mix into a bowl oats, a pinch of salt, and then some spices. So cinnamon, some ginger, really whatever you've got. Cardamom, nutmegs, cloves. You can add that whole pumpkin spice mix in again, but if you don't want to, that cardamom, nutmeg, and cloves, you can really eliminate that, whatever fits your fancy. We're going to add a little bit of brown sugar to that. You can add honey if you'd like, or maple syrup, or leave it out. But the brown sugar does add a little bit more flavor, and then there's some crispiness too. If you can brown it, like broil it afterwards, it's going to be fantastic. And then adding on the top some pecans or walnuts or some sort of crunchy nut, and then a little bit of melted butter as well, so that we can mix this all together. And then, of course, a dollop of ice cream or Greek yogurt or toasted pecans on the top of that while serving. There's nothing more delightful, right? All right, our instructions. So we preheat our oven to 350. Something else that you can do is to microwave it. So we're going to microwave it for about 3 minutes and test it, and then we're going to stick it in and broil it after to get that crispiness from the top down. And then, of course, you're going to wash your apples and you're going to pat them dry. You're going to slice off a top quarter of the apple, take that core out, and then widen the cavity or that opening just a bit so that more mixture can go in. We're going to mix all of the crisp ingredients together and then spoon that into the apple, pushing it down slightly to fill that cavity. Set the apples in a baking dish. I've got a 9x9 here, and we want to add about a 1/2 inch of hot water to the bottom of it so that it doesn't dehydrate as it's cooking, and so that some of that water, because we're going to tint it with tin foil, that water will help to steam it from the bottom up. Cover it in foil and then bake it for about 40 minutes or until a knife inserted comes out nice and tender and nice and easily. So Marianne was just saying you can also add these to muffin cups, and then you have them individually and they're not going to fall over, and they're going to make sure that you keep all of the apple crisp topping inside your apple, and that is a wonderful tip. So of course, let them cool slightly before adding your ice cream on top, or else you will be eating cream and not ice cream. So there we have it. Let's get started. We've got to prep our apples. I've already done these 3, so I'm just going to show you how I did them. So any way that you can get the core out without totally wrecking the apple, because we can't cut it in half or else there's nothing left to stuff. So what you want to do is, watching your fingers, but you want to take your knife to the outside of that core and push it down all the way, because if you only push it a little bit, then the bottom won't fully get cut because that knife doesn't have a wide diameter at the bottom. So you just want to push it all the way down on all 4 sides of that core, and feel free to take it a little bit wider than what you know the core to be, because we're going to have to cut some off anyways, because we want it a little bit thicker at the top, or more open at the top to stuff some more in. Once you've got all 4 sides there done, just flip that over I'm not sure if you can match up. If you don't see the holes on this side, try to match it up, but if not, we'll just go around it again. It will eventually fall out. It just sometimes takes a little bit more effort if all of those sides didn't connect. Woo! Look at that. Can grow an apple tree right here. So after that, you just push the rest out with your fingers without breaking your apple. So there we have it, all the way cored all the way through. It looks like, however, I have a little bit of core left in there, so you don't want to bite into that when you're eating it, so just go through and cut that out. And then it says to slice the top quarter off the apple. So we're just going to take that top little bit and then just slice that off. And I think, because that's a good wide one, I think I'm going to cut a little bit of this one out of the top just to be able to stuff some of that mixture in. We don't want a whole lot left over. Although, if you had some topping left over, just make another apple crisp in a mini little container. This one needs a little bit of widening, I do believe. For the large apples, you want to have a good ratio of topping to that outside apple flesh. There we go. So after that, don't throw those apple pieces out. You can enjoy them for snack, right? Add a little piece of cheese or add some nuts or some nut butter. Don't eat your core, but eat everything else. Thank you so much. Perfect. So now we are going to do the crisp mixture to be able to stir this all together. So 1/3 of a cup of oats. And again, you can use whatever cutting of oats you have. The large flake, the 3 to 5 minute, the instant, all of those are fine. The difference is only that they've been cut more often with a steel blade. Have you guys known the difference between a whole oat coming out of the field and then an instant oat? The only difference is actually how many times it gets cut. So you take an oat piece of grain out of the field and then they roll it and they get rolled oats. They take that rolled oat and they cut it with a steel blade and they call it steel cut oats. And then they cut it again a couple of times and then they have 3 to 5 minute oats, and they cut it even more and you get instant oats because there's more of that oat flake exposed and it cooks up instantly. So oats are actually the only grain that I know of that when processed by cutting and rolling doesn't lose any of its fiber. So that's pretty great. So we have our oatmeal. We're going to add a pinch of salt. This can be left out, of course, if you're watching your salt intake. And then we're going to add our spices. So you feel free to add whatever you'd like. I'm a big cinnamon fan, so I'm always going to add some cinnamon. Let's add a little bit of ginger. I'm not a huge fan, but we can definitely add that up. And we've got, this is cardamom. I'm not sure if you even have that at home. It's not very common unless you come from an East Indian background, and they usually have them in pods instead of the ground form. But it kind of, Marian and I were chatting earlier, it kind of smells a little lemony. It's a very cool flavor. I enjoy it a lot. I actually have the pods, and I put the pod, I break open the pod and put the fruit of the pod, and they're really little tiny things, into my smoothies and ground it up, and it's quite tasty. And this is nutmeg. So we're gonna just add a dash of nutmeg and a dash of cloves. Oh, perfect. Thank you, ma'am. And a dash. So if you have pumpkin pie spice combination in a container, just add maybe 1/4 or 1/2 teaspoon of that with some extra cinnamon, and then you don't have to get all of these containers individually, right? So after that, we're going to add a couple of tablespoons of our brown sugar. You can add white sugar if you'd like. The difference between brown and white sugar is just that the brown sugar has more iron, more molasses in it. They haven't taken them all out. So that's why the white sugar is less sticky than the brown, because molasses is high in vitamins, but also quite sticky. So then we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of chopped nuts. Thank you. So we have a few different options here. We've got some pumpkin seeds, we've got some pecan pieces, and then we have some walnuts here. So I prefer actually the pecans. I find them not as strong of a flavor as the walnuts, but whatever you like, you add in what is your favorite. All right, our last ingredient is melted butter. Add that melted butter right into all your other ingredients. And now we give it a stir. So we're on to instruction number 4. Mix the crisp ingredients and spoon the mixture into the apples. So as you can see, this crisp ingredients is looking quite a bit like an apple crisp topping. We got some butter, we've got some sugar, some oats, some nuts. Pretty fantastic right there. So what you have to do is to find a spoon small enough to get into these spaces. So get your apples aligned. I'm gonna maybe push them together, trying to not fall over is the goal. So you're gonna stuff this stuff in there and try to push it down a little bit so that there's no empty spaces in there. There we go. Excellent. And remember, you can, if you like, oh, I'm getting messy. If you like raisins or currants or cran raisins in here, that would also be delightful. And don't forget to scrape out your bowl because, you know, you worked hard to get that all in there and you don't want to leave anything in a spot where you're just going to wash it down the sink. Now at the same time, I know I'm spilling a little bit around. You don't really want to spill much outside of these apples because you're going to put water in the bottom of the pan, just a tad, but then you really won't want to eat the stuff that's in the bottom of the pan because it'll be a bit mushy. Now because we're going to use the microwave, we're really not going to put much water in the bottom. If you have a cover that you can throw on that container that you're using, I think that would be better because then the apples are going to steam. Try to wipe off those spices that are on that spoon. So we're actually just going to stick, because you don't really want to use plastic wrap in the microwave because it melts into the food. So we're going to stick parchment paper over top. We're going to start microwaving this. We'll make sure on your recipe. All right, so I cooked it for 6 minutes, checking it about every 2 or 3, and I think they're done. So what I do like about having that parchment paper over top is that, as you can see, it kept some of the steam in there. We have some condensation on the inside, so that worked out really well. So let's pull these out. There we have it. Look at that. Baked apple crisp apples. Now at this moment, you can throw that in the broiler and toast the top a little bit if you'd like. I think they look pretty perfect just like that. You can see the skin is keeping that whole apple together, but the inside is nicely mushed. It is really neat now that we've used 4 different apples, how each type of apple cooked down. So the yellow or the Golden Delicious, I think it's not as mushy on the inside as the Ambrosia. The Macintosh, or no, I guess that was a Spartan that we used. Oh, thank you, Cortland. And it looks like it's pretty mushy in there as well. And then the Fiji.
Gala.
Oh yes, thank you. The Gala, I think I must have broke it because it looks like when it cooked it got broken. But it looks a little bit smushy as well. So depending on what kind of texture that you enjoy, that you can choose your apple accordingly to less mushy and more mushy. So enjoy making these. Let Rebecca know what spices you have chosen today.